It was a cold evening in the small town of Ravenswood, nestled among misty hills and dark forests. The town was known for its old-world charm, but it held secrets buried deep in its shadows. In Ravenswood, things weren't always as peaceful as they seemed, and the latest event would uncover more than anyone expected. The story begins at Ravenswood Manor, an imposing Gothic mansion sitting at the edge of town. It belonged to the prestigious Lancaster family, who had been the town's wealthy and influential figures for generations. The family patriarch, Edward Lancaster, was found dead in his study one stormy night. His body lay sprawled across the ornate rug, an antique letter opener stabbed into his chest. No signs of forced entry. No struggle. Just death. Detective Clara Thornton, a sharp-witted investigator with a knack for uncovering the hidden truth, was called to the scene. She was not a local. She had only recently moved to Ravenswood after a career in the big city. It didn't take long for her to realize that the people of Ravenswood were not as welcoming as they appeared. They had their own way of keeping secrets, and none were eager to speak up. The scene at the manor was chilling. The windows were rattling from the storm outside, casting eerie shadows across the walls. Edward's wife, Veronica Lancaster, was the first to greet Clara. She was a woman of grace, her beauty timeless despite the tragedy unfolding in her life. Her eyes, however, held something else, fear, or perhaps guilt. The tear-streaked face she showed the detective seemed like a mask, hiding something darker. Clara began her investigation by questioning the family and staff members. Veronica was distraught but seemed composed, almost too composed for a woman whose husband had just been murdered. Their son, William, was a brooding figure, kept to himself in his room, seemingly unaffected by his father's death. The housekeeper, Mrs. Green, had been with the family for decades, but she spoke little, and her eyes darted nervously whenever Clara was near. Then there was Dr. Simon Carter, the family's physician, who had been present during the discovery of the body, but his hands trembled as he recounted the event, his voice quivering with something more than just sorrow. The first clue came from the letter opener. It was an old heirloom, one of the family's prized possessions. But the way it had been inserted, precisely and cleanly, suggested the killer had known what they were doing. It wasn't a crime of passion, it was calculated. Clara was convinced that the murderer was someone close to Edward Lancaster. The house was filled with portraits of long-dead ancestors, all staring down with disapproval. Clara's instincts told her that the answer to the mystery was hidden within the Lancaster family's history. But there was something else at play here. The manor was far too quiet, as if it had been waiting for something to happen for years. The more Clara delved into the lives of the family, the more she uncovered troubling details. Edward had been a ruthless businessman, manipulating and controlling those around him. William had been in debt, struggling with his own demons. Veronica had been seen with a mysterious man a few months before her husband's death, but she denied any affair. Dr. Carter had been struggling with addiction, and his alibi for the night of the murder seemed thin. Mrs. Green, the loyal housekeeper, had been the only one who had always been by Edward's side, but Clara found strange letters hidden in her room, letters written in code, hinting at a secret she had kept for years. Clara felt the walls of Ravenswood closing in on her. She started to question her own motives for being there. Was she just trying to solve a murder, or was she looking for something else, something that had haunted her own past? It was during a late-night conversation with Mrs. Green that the truth began to take form. The housekeeper confessed that years ago, Veronica had been involved in a tragic accident that had left her unable to bear children. The family had desperately needed an heir, and so, Edward had sought help from a woman outside the family, a woman who had died under mysterious circumstances shortly after giving birth to a son, William. The truth was, William wasn't Edward's biological child, he was the son of the woman who had died in that accident. The murder was not just a crime of passion, it was a long-buried family secret that had finally come to light. The killer, it seemed, was Veronica. She had known the truth about William's parentage and could not bear the thought of it becoming public. The inheritance, the family's legacy, all of it would be lost if the truth came out. In a fit of rage, she had killed Edward to protect her family's reputation. But as Clara pieced together the puzzle, another layer of deception emerged. Veronica had been hiding behind her facade of grief, and it was only after the murder that she realized the consequences of her actions. She had killed the very man who had been trying to protect her. The case was closed, but Clara couldn't shake the feeling that something more was hidden beneath the surface of Ravenswood. The town had a way of swallowing its secrets, keeping them buried under layers of fog and whispers. But Clara had uncovered the truth, and sometimes, the truth was more dangerous than the lies that protected it. In the end, Clara left Ravenswood, but she never forgot the silent witness to the tragedy, the dark mansion that held more than just a murder. It held the weight of generations of secrets, secrets that no one would ever truly escape. And the town, with all its fog and shadows, would remain a silent witness to the dark story that unfolded within its walls.